Hi, this is Dr. Cindy Woody with a little free exam prep for you over the TExES 268 Principal as Instructional Leader exam. In this video, I'll be comparing the four constructed response items, also called the essay items if you're me, because sometimes that's just a lot to say. The purpose of this exam is to provide an overview for people who are new to the TExES 268. Maybe you're just starting your classwork or you're new to TExES, you need to take the exam. So this should give you an idea of where to start. It could be a review for those of you who have already watched my other videos on the constructive response items. Or maybe you're about to take your test and you need a refresh. You're just looking back over things one more time. Or maybe you took your test and you didn't score as well as you'd hoped on your constructive response items and you're ready for a reteach. So let's start by acknowledging that this exam is hard. It helps if you go in with a plan in your head for each constructive response item. So remember, you cannot take any written notes into the test, but you can take a plan in your head because even though each question is unique, you have like 1, 2, 3, and 4 are different from each other, and the scenarios that you and the people around you will receive are unique, written for various applications, administrations of the test. These questions are also predictable. That means when you go in with a plan, you can predict what number one is going to focus on every single time, and number two, and so forth. The constructed response items are confusing and they have a lot of moving parts, so you will need to skim. So read the prompt carefully, but don't get bogged down in the supporting documents. Get the big idea. So look for numbers, look for trends and patterns. Are students doing well? Are the documents aligned, or whatever your question is? These items take up a lot of your test time. So you should plan to spend about 30 minutes per constructed response item. Practice, have a plan, and go in feeling strong, smart, and ready. You can do this. You'll see this slide several times. This slide lists the items that you will be provided as supporting documents for each of the four essays. For constructive response number one, you're going to be entering into a post-conference with a teacher you've observed. So your task in number one is to prepare for a post-conference coaching conversation. You'll be provided with the teacher's lesson plan, exit ticket, exemplar that the teacher created, student responses, and a video observation. And no, you can't skip the video observation. That's not a place you should skim. Watch the whole video. Your task is, when you're done with these things, you're preparing for the post-conference in which you'll coach up the teacher. In task two, or question number two, you'll be helping teachers improve a unit. So the idea is these teachers have worked together. They've created a unit plan. It might just be one teacher, but usually I believe it's several. They're creating a unit plan and they're trying to work backwards and start with the standards and the outcomes in mind. But in some cases, their unit plan is weak. So your task is to identify the improvement needed. In task three, or constructive response three, you're going to be analyzing data for reteaching. So in this scenario, the teachers have already taught the lesson. They've collected the student data. They have some type of exit ticket or assessment items for you to look at. And the teachers have made a reteaching plan. So your task is to improve the data analysis so they can improve their reteaching plan. And then the final one is focused on spotlighting you as an instructional leader as the principal of a school. So you're going to be working with your stakeholders to make a plan for school improvement. You'll be given school-wide data sources, a stakeholder feedback of some sort, whether that's survey data or other information from stakeholders. You'll be given needs assessments and culture pieces. So your task is to develop an improvement plan. And then the things that you'll be producing for the exam, we'll go over these in more detail too. So for constructive response item one, the improvement of teaching and learning, you're going to state one instructional practice to improve. That's it. You're just going to pick one thing from the observation. As you prepare for the post-conference, you're going to pick, you know how they say one grow and one glow? You're going to pick one grow. You're going to pick one action step for the teacher as part of the grow, and then you're going to provide one guiding question. And then you'll tell how using this question will impact teaching and learning, or using this whole improvement, how that will impact teaching and learning for that teacher. And constructive response two, you're going to focus on improving unit planning. So you're just going to pick 2 areas out of the whole unit that they could work on. Maybe not specific areas. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but you're going to justify why you chose the 2 areas for improvement. You're going to create an exemplar for just one of those areas, and you're going to tell how you could use it to work with teachers. And then on task 3, the constructive response 3, improving data analysis, they're going to be asking you now just to write 2 questions. So you're going to write 2 high leverage questions that you could ask teachers that would help them look at the data and do a better job to improve their reteaching plan. And then you're going to explain how this question would help the teacher do better. And then for the final one, scenario 4, improving the learning culture, you're going to identify what you feel in this whole bit of information, the whole scenarios, what the most pressing need is. You're going to justify why you chose this area as the most urgent and make a plan to address it and explain why this plan would be effective. Remember, AI or humans will be grading your test and they will not use their imagination. You must address the prompt exactly as directed. Always encourage test takers to go in the order of the prompt. Don't get crazy and try to make this beautiful long essay. Use the evidence from the documents they provide to support your answer. Do not use evidence from your personal experiences. So don't get caught in the trap of writing in your essay or your response about something that you did when you were a teacher or that you did as a principal or that something that worked well at your school. You're not going to say that. You're going to focus on the evidence and the scenario they've given. Do not try to get fancy. This isn't the time for you to break out those big words or long paragraphs or just to focus on the beauty of the language. Not now. This is a constructive response answer. It's going to answer it fully and move on. So let's look at number 1. Now, before I start explaining number 1, if any of this is confusing, there's a whole video on constructive response 1, just like there is on number 2, number 3, and number 4. Each video, I believe, is like 12 to 15 minutes or so, and it gives you more detail and examples to help you with these specific items. So you're going to state one high leverage instructional practice to improve. And so I get the question, what is a high leverage instructional practice? I tell people to go in with 3 in mind and find the one that you think fits the scenario. And really, you can probably make these fit any scenario. Pacing, alignment, and explicit instruction. I tell a little bit more about those in the video. So you're going to state, let's say, in this scenario, um, this is number 1. So you're observing the teacher. Mr. Jones, an area where Mr. Jones could improve is pacing. High leverage instructional practice that Mr. Jones could improve is pacing. And then you're going to say 2 artifacts. You're going to say, in the observation video, Mr. Jones spent 15 minutes on the introduction, and he only spent 2 minutes on the guided practice. And in the student exit ticket data, it was clear that students were able to do more with the topic he instructed in the guided practice, in the introduction than in the guided practice, or whatever. I mean, that may not be the best example, but you can see how that would be justified with clear artifacts. Then you're going to pick one high leverage action step for the teacher and tell why. This action should match up with the high level instructional practice you chose. So remember, you're coaching the teacher and you're going to say, I want you to start working on better alignment in your lesson plans, or uh, using feedback to check for more explicit instruction, or whatever your prompt is for your high level instruction action. And then script a guiding question to ask the teacher. It must be in the question form. Be sure and use a question mark. So you can ask the teacher a question that matches the challenge that you've given them for improvement, and that you'll know that when the teacher answers this question, it should align with the change you want to see. And then explain how the action step and the guiding question will work together to improve teaching and learning. So in this situation, you're just going to restate the obvious. Remember, this is a post-conference conversation. So when you do a grow conversation with the teacher, you want to always bring it back to instruction. And when you do this, the impact you'll see will be on the instruction. The students will benefit from better pacing by whatever. So these are some examples of why people would get feedback on their tests where they have not been successful or did not get a high score on their constructive response, and what you can do to make sure you get a constructive response. So I really like this is straight from the video. I like the graphic on the right. I cut and pasted from a video screen. It shows the order that you should write your answers. So you're going to state your instructional practice improvement, evidence, evidence, State your action step, and then it's unstated in the directions but graded. Explain how the step will make a difference. State your coaching question, so nothing to do with the coaching question, and explain how the action step and the coaching question work together to improve this teacher's teaching and learning. So if you obviously don't want to mess up, but if you were going to not do your very best, you would lack clarity in your answer. And I would say mostly on this one, it's going to be lacking clarity in the way that you mention the artifacts. So you can't just say, as observed in the lesson plan, the teacher needs to work on alignment. Like that's not evidence. That's just a vague statement. So you have to be very clear about what it was in the lesson plan that led you, as a brilliant instructional leader, to realize that this teacher doesn't have a good grasp on alignment. Also, if you just deviate from the directions, you could mess up. So if it says state an instructional practice, they just want one. Don't give them 10. If they say state a question and there's no question, then you're not going to get credit for it. You have to ask a question. Or if you go negative, it's really dangerous to say anything negative about the teacher or the instruction. Remember, as a professional instructional leader, you're not going to tear your teachers down. You're going to encourage them. You're going to find value in their work. And when you get to the part where you're having the hard conversation about how they need to improve, you're just going to focus on the obvious. You're not going to say anything about them personally or about going too deep on the negative side. Okay, so the parts of constructive response number 2. On number 2, you're going to choose 2 areas in need of improvement. And again, it can be very similar to number 1. Alignment and rigor are always good. Pacing, instructional strategies. So remember, you're sitting there with your teachers. Let me go to the next slide and show you. You're looking at a unit plan, see number 2? Standard state star released items, an exit ticket, resources they're going to use to teach, and you're trying to help them understand how somehow they've missed it a little bit in their plan. So you're going to say, like the lesson plan is not aligned with the rigor of state exams and the state standards. And you could say, for example, on item number 4 on the release test, the rigor level is much different and much higher than number 1 on the exit ticket. Something like that, very specific. Then you're going to justify why these 2 areas, and you're going to use evidence from the artifacts. That's just what I'm talking about. That's your justification. You're going to create an exemplar to improve one of the identified areas, and you're going to tell how to use the exemplar to improve the structural practices of the teachers. Now, you may be tempted to use an exemplar like what we were provided in the other items. And typically, an exemplar is an item that the teacher makes to show how he or she wants the students to respond to the assessment piece at the end of the lesson. So if I'm teaching a lesson on, let's say, main idea, I'm teaching a lesson on main idea. At the end, I want the students to be able to identify main idea. Then I want to write an exemplar that shows how they would respond correctly. You can write that for number 2. That can be the exemplar that you use. So if it's a math lesson, you could write in the line math exemplar. However, let me go over here and show you. If you've watched the video for number 2, there's a much easier way. If you stick to what you said for your area 1 or area 2 for your justification, because remember, you're going to pick area 1 that needs improvement, justify, evidence, evidence. Area 2, or the way that needs improvement, justify, evidence, evidence. But if you do this part right here that says everyone else, you're not a content or curriculum expert. You're just going to talk about the kind of improvement, and you're going to write an exemplar around that. So let's say you pick pacing. Let's say the unit spends too much time on lower level activities. Let's say it's a pre-algebra unit. And in one part of the TExES, it says that the students need to use multiplication, addition, subtraction, division to solve problems. And the other part says they need to be able to solve for a missing letter in an equation. Maybe they spent 6 days of the unit going back over addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and they only spent 3 days of the unit talking about solving an equation. So obviously their pacing is off. So then you would create a pacing guide that simply says, use 2 days for the introduction to the a review of or whatever. Use 8 days or whatever your suggestion is. You're going to focus on a pacing guide. If you go to the video, it tells how to make a fairly generic pacing guide so that you're really focused on the activity of the principal discussing pacing and not getting so deep into being a content or curriculum expert. The ways that you could not do well on this one is to not do two areas or to not use two pieces of evidence for each area or to not close it up. You have to close it out by answering how this is going to have an impact on student learning. So be sure and write that closing sentence. Okay, so parts of constructive response number 3. This one can be the place where you save time. It may look like the most overwhelming because it has the most pieces of evidence or the most documentation, supporting documents. But it really is the easiest in terms of what you have to produce. All you have to do is you have to write 2 high leverage questions. You have to give 2 pieces of evidence for the questions, and you tell the reason why you think you should use them. So here's an example of what they give you. So we're on number 3. This is a scenario where you're working with a teacher or a group of teachers who have already finished teaching a lesson. They're holding some data in their hand. They may also be holding some historical data in their hand. You're going to help them look through this plan that they've made to reteach to find some more obvious solutions for better reteaching. So this one can be easier than it appears. Don't stress over every little idea in the sky. You may see that these teachers have really missed the boat in 4 or 5 different ways, but you're just going to write one great question with 2 pieces of evidence of why you would ask that question and the reason for it, and then repeat how it's going to improve their situation. So if maybe they've decided that they're going to reteach something that almost everybody did well on, or maybe they don't realize that on question C, people are guessing. I mean, question number 3, people are all guessing. They're guessing all the different answers. So you're going to help them go through that by asking questions that have question marks. You got to put those question marks on these. And then you're going to show where they missed it or how this is important in the student numbers. Use numbers on this one. You're going to say because 20% of the students chose randomly or whatever your answer is. And then you're going to repeat the answer. Repeat with a reason. Repeat the whole process again. One great question, 2 pieces of evidence, and 1 reason, and repeat. Okay, and then parts of constructive response number 4. Let's look at this one. You're going to identify the most pressing needs. So in this situation, you're the principal. You're working on the school culture. The school culture is broken. Like you may be the brand new principal coming into a situation where it seems like everything has gone wrong, or it may be that you're returning for year 2 or year 3 in the scenario, but you do kind of have some information about academics, but a lot of the competing information will not be about academics. So don't take the bait. I always say don't take the bait on this one. They're trying to trick you into writing a response where you talk about parent involvement or you talk about the school calendar or something that has nothing to do with the direct need of instructional improvements. So the most pressing need will probably be something about math, reading, science, social studies. It may be that you see a lot of behavioral problems in this situation, but you're not going to focus entirely on these things. You're going to justify why this need is the most urgent of all. And typically, you'll have some type of historical data that shows that in this building, they've never really done well on this. You're going to make a multi-step plan to address it. So if the issue is, we'll just say subtraction, that as a whole, students aren't able to apply subtraction and use it consistently at any grade level. But your plan's not about subtraction. Your plan is about how getting everybody on board with instructional strategies and professional development and parent involvement and whatever your issues are, improving behavior, how all of these things are going to improve student outcomes for subtraction or for the new reading curriculum or whatever your content area or instructional need is. The multi-step plan it's your responsibility to explain why it's going to be effective. And that has a lot to do with building in timelines for checking. So again, here's the data sources that they're going to give you. And in your plan, see this part right here, the shared vision, support, and professional development and monitoring. In the video, we talk about the video for number 4, that there's some universal features for any improvement plan. So in your plan, you're going to keep the focus on instruction, but you're going to talk about how you're going to build a shared vision around improving reading outcomes or math outcomes or whatever through listening sessions, needs assessment, stakeholder meetings, team building, communication, parent engagement. You're going to get that shared vision built for the plan, do, study, act. That's the planning part. And how you're going to act. You're going to do. You're going to plan, do. You're going to actually have the instruction going on. And while it's going on, you're going to be coaching. You're going to offer professional development. You'll have professional learning communities and the other items on this list. And then how you're going to monitor that plan. That's the study. Plan, do, study. You're going to study what's going on. You're going to have implementation timeline, benchmarks, check-ins, resets, celebrations. And then in the end, you're going to go back with the data and you're going to circle back to stay focused on student achievement. And that will create your learning culture for you. So if you're going to not do well on this one, it's going to be because you were too generalized in your responses as far as the evidence. Remember, the plan can be generalized, the evidence needs to be specific when you use the documentation. Or you spent too long discussing the issues and you didn't get to the plan. Or you bird walked. I don't know if that's a phrase or a word that you're familiar with, but to bird walk around it just means that you never really were clear with the point. You need to get to the point in the plan and be very clear and go in with a plan in mind. Remember, you could apply this plan to any issue. Also, keep the focus on instruction and be sure and wrap it up with that final statement to say why it's effective. This is one last bird's eye view for you in the curriculum instruction assessment triangle. You probably saw this in your preparation. At the heart of everything is student instruction. The state is responsible for measuring whether you have mastered these areas, and one way they do it is through these constructed response items. So, constructed response item number 1 will get to see you showcased as an instructional leader in helping a teacher improve instruction. That's all what the post conference is about. In constructed response number 2, it shows how you as a leader, even though your district has adopted curriculum and the state has adopted standards, you as an instructional leader can go in and help teachers improve units and thereby improve the curriculum and the teaching materials that will lead to better student learning. In constructed response number 3, it shows that you have an impact not only on how the assessments are formed, like in curriculum in essay number 2, but also on what we do with the data that we collected. Remember, we don't ever want to collect data just for the sake of collecting data. It always needs to be part of the bigger picture of improvement of student outcomes and student learning. And then constructed response number 4 shows how you put all this together. Are you able to go in and look at instruction, curriculum, assessments, internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, and all of the different feedback structures and systems that are giving you information? And can you keep the focus on what the focus should be on, which is student learning? So for my final parting word, I've said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. You've got this. We need you in the field. Those of us who are getting older and aging out are looking for some great leaders to pick up where we left off. We think you can take the school systems of Texas to the next level and take us forward into the future generations that impact my grandchildren. So remember, this is important work. It matters. You've got this. I can't wait to see. Go to my Facebook, not my Facebook page, my YouTube page, and comment and tell me when you pass this test because I can't wait to congratulate you on being the next certified principal in the state of Texas.